So yes, I believe it should kick in. There we go. All right, we're recording. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us today for the Global nopCommerce or nopCommerce Global Meetup. And today we're going to have Ethan Lazuk. Is that the way you pronounce your last name? Lazuk?
It's Lazuk.
All right. And he's going to, here, I'll just kind of pop through the agenda. Well, I guess first off, being a global meetup, you know, this is a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening to everyone out there. And I totally understand this could either be way too early or too late for everybody. So this will be recorded, or it's being recorded right now, and it will be posted on the nopCommerce YouTube channel, usually within the next couple days. I'll also update the meetup post with a link directly to the video. So for today's agenda, we're not going to have a lightning talk today. It's mainly because I found a video out there that probably suffices as a great lightning talk for today's content. And yes, our main talk will be eCommerce SEO 101, a guide for online store owners with Ethan Lazuk. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of Q&A. I'll be monitoring the chat when it comes to just questions getting posted. If it seems like it's a timely question to ask, I'll go ahead and ask you, Ethan. If it makes sense to. Otherwise, we'll hold off most Q&A till the end.
Sounds good.
So in lieu of a lightning talk, I found this video out there on the nopCommerce YouTube channel, Understanding SEO Settings in nopCommerce. So when it comes to getting nopCommerce specific on what you want to implement, this is actually a really good tutorial just to kind of go through and to apply most likely some of the things you're going to learn today. And of course, this global meetup is for both developers and store owners. So I'd say today's our first non-technical talk, or where it's heavily getting into code, things like that, which is great to have a bit of a change of pace. So that's what we're all about, is really when it comes to nopCommerce, technical and non-technical content. And we've been pretty consistent about being the third Tuesday of every month. So hopefully you can keep joining us. And the videos, as I mentioned, do get put out on the YouTube channel. We got a pretty good archive already out there from the past meetups. They're definitely worth checking out, and they've been pretty active on getting some hits. Of course, if you want to give a talk, something around 60 minutes, or even a lightning talk around 15, 20 minutes for something technical or non-technical, or if you're interested in sponsoring where you want to, a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting to say a few things, and also I would post your logo and company information on the meetup post. Just email me at john@nopacademy.com for any of those aspects that you would like to take part in. I know for next month we're going to have a almost like a continuation of plugin development when it comes to data-related plugins. And for January, so far I have someone lined up that is a plugin developer. They've been kind of doing it on their own for about the last 10 years and then selling products. And it's going to be more of an interview with that developer for January. So, of course, reach out to me if you would like to give a talk or sponsor this meetup. And from there, Ethan, I am going to turn it over to you. And feel free, if you want to turn on video, that's great. If you don't, for performance, that's great as well. Your choice.
Yeah, might as well.
Sounds good.
Okay, so hey everybody, my name is Ethan Lazuk. The talk I'm going to give today is eCommerce SEO 101, guide for store owners. Let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm an SEO strategist at Bayshore Solutions, where I've been since 2019. I've been doing SEO and content marketing since 2015. A day in the life of what I do is really click around on websites, audit them for opportunities, and then try and take advantage of those opportunities based on the goals of the business. I tweet about SEO occasionally if you're on Twitter, and I'm going to try and cover a lot of ground today. If you do have questions that we can't get to here, you can feel free to email me. I just want to give a quick shout out to the agency I work for, Bayshore Solutions. So we're an end-to-end digital agency, which means we have a full team of inbound digital marketers as well as website designers and developers. We're a nopCommerce Gold partner, and as you can see on the right there, we have a whole website page dedicated to nopCommerce. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. So this is SEO 101. It's really meant to be sort of high level. And when I say intended for store owners, that means whether you're trying to do SEO on your own, whether you're looking to hire somebody, or whether you're working with SEOs and you just want to understand more of what they're doing or communicate with them better. That's really kind of the purpose of the content I'm going to present today. I'm going to talk about e-commerce SEO sort of broadly, and a lot of it's going to be in the context of Google search. But everything I'm saying will apply to nopCommerce. And you'll see the website examples that I use throughout this are all nopCommerce websites as well. I'm not going to go into implementation of how to actually do these things in the CMS. However, there's the video that John mentioned, and then also there's a blog post that we collaborated with nopCommerce on called nopCommerce SEO Setup Guide. This kind of pairs well with this talk, and it will explain how to implement some of these things I'm talking about today. I also put sources on the bottom of the slides. So if you like what I'm talking about and you want to learn more about it, or if you're curious where I might have gotten some of that information, you can check out the URLs at the bottom of the slides. So we'll start out with a quick definition of what SEO is. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. It's really part art and part science, where the goal is to increase the visibility of the website in organic search results, as well as deliver the best user experience possible. This sentence really kind of summarizes up well what our goals are, which is really to create understanding, credibility, and deliverability for search engines. A couple of the common goals that we usually have with SEO. So we want higher rankings for specific queries or keywords. We want to generate more brand awareness with a target audience. We want to create a sustainable marketing model that isn't budget dependent. And this is really big in the context of COVID, when a lot of businesses had to, reduce their marketing budgets and cut down on things, and sort of that long-term value of SEO really became more apparent in a lot of those cases. And then this is an e-commerce focused talk, so we also want to talk about optimizing for the online shopping experience. So a quick note when we're talking about organic search rankings. So a lot of us will probably remember the original days of Google, where it had what we refer to as 10 blue links. And it was really just 10 very simple results that all linked to a web page. And basically in those days, you knew where you stood, right? Like if you're ranking third in position 3, you have a pretty good idea of what that means. But today's Google landscape, the search result pages are very dynamic and complex. There's lots of rich results, lots of search features. Some recent studies suggest that as much as 50% of people that go to Google never click on any result. And part of the reason for that is because they can get the answers directly in the search results as opposed to going to a page. So when we're talking about rankings and we're looking about position and things like this, it's important to kind of put that in the context of what's the search result actually look like? What are the types of content that are ranking, and how do we fit in? And then in terms of rankings, you'll hear a lot of like the Google algorithm. You'll hear that referred to a lot. The way that people at Google refer to it, or have referred to it, is they have millions of baby algorithms, and that these respond to hundreds of different ranking signals. And the weights on those are always kind of changing and in flux. So it's hard to say this ranking signal is more important than this one, because it can really vary. In terms of a couple of the big signals that we kind of know about and pay attention to. So relevance and quality are the two biggest, and they're always sort of in balance. So relevance, if you want to rank for a keyword someone's searching, you need to have some relevant content on your page. But at the same time, that needs to be balanced out with quality. Otherwise, we could end up with like keyword stuffed pages, spammy pages, things like that. Page rank, which is driven by backlinks, authoritative backlinks. Site speed, which is especially important for mobile page load speed. Mobile friendliness, so how well does your site appear on mobile? Is it usable? Is the navigation optimized? Personalization, so your search history also plays a role in the results you'll see. And then localization. Localization is a huge factor in the search results you'll see. So it affects, obviously, the businesses and things like that you'll see when you search, but it can also affect normal search results as well. So brand awareness, what I want to talk about this is is brand entities. And what I mean by that is Google has a knowledge graph, which they use to understand what they say things instead of strings. So a good example of that would be this kind of hypothetical business here, Sarah's Car Wash. Seen as like a string of text, this would be, Sarah, car, and wash, 3 distinct words. Whereas when it achieves sort of entity status, sort of the deeper context behind it is understood. So it would be understood as like, oh, it's a business in Tampa, it's at such and such address, it has such and such rankings. And when you achieve that entity status, it has some benefits in terms of visibility. So one of them is getting a knowledge panel or knowledge cards. You can see nopCommerce has one of those, which is that box on the right-hand side. So if you search for nopCommerce, you'll probably see this appear. It pulls in some info from Wikipedia, some other relevant information. But as a brand and trying to build your business, if you can get in the knowledge graph and get this kind of visibility, it's a big boon to making you look legitimate and getting your name out there. In terms of kind of establishing this presence, it's about building reviews, backlinks, even unlinked mentions. If you're getting mentioned and they're not linking to you, that can still be helpful. Strong about content on your site, and most especially structured data. So structured data isn't necessarily seen by users of your site, but it feeds information directly to Google, and it also feeds directly into the knowledge graph in most cases. And sort of as the larger goal for brand awareness, it's really to build prominence, create consistent brand messaging. So anywhere someone sees your brand, it's kind of a consistent information. And above all, to appear trustworthy and to build user trust. So SEO as sustainable marketing, there's a lot of talk about how SEO can be really long-term, and it can take 5 or 6 months to see results from doing something. The truth is it's really nuanced. So say we published a blog post today, we could start getting organic traffic from that almost immediately. So that's a quick win. If we had some sort of technical issue on the site and we fix that, then within a week or two, we could be seeing a dramatic improvement as a result of that. So there are these kind of quick wins available with SEO, but when we take a step back and look at the strategy as a whole, it really is building a long-term and sort of gradual sustainable presence. One reason it takes a long time, or can, is that search engines like sites with authority, and authority just takes time to build. It's more difficult to get a newer site ranking because it's unknown and untrusted. Again, COVID-19 was sort of a reminder that organic traffic can really be that reliable channel where if we did have to pause, paid ads or pause email campaigns or something like that, then if we had a strong organic presence, we could continue to drive, traffic, through those times. In terms of trying to future-proof your site by using SEO, one of the biggest things is to use evergreen content. And what I mean is, say you're going to publish a blog post, you want that to be as relevant today as it would have been a year ago or a year in the future. This can apply to like sale pages too. Say you have a Black Friday sale page on your site. Rather than taking that down and creating a new one year after year, you could simply keep the page alive and just update it every year. The flip side of that, though, is that we also want to make sure our sites reflect the present context of the times. So, we're living in an era now where social distancing, wearing masks, things like this are just part of everyday life. So if your site's talking about going to work in a busy office as opposed to working from home, or if you're showing pictures of people crowded together and it feels a little dated and unempathetic, those are things to address. The other one is creating for users first. So we hear this question a lot where a site owner will say, I want to do this to my site. How is this going to impact my SEO? Or will this be good for SEO? And we like to hear that. We like to hear that people are thinking about SEO, but really the question that should come before that is this going to help my users? Is this going to be good for my users? Because ultimately what Google's trying to do is give users the best experience. And so if you optimize your site for users, then chances are you're going to be doing things that are going to benefit your SEO. A couple of e-commerce specific considerations. So product management is obviously one of the biggest ones. You want to publish all of your products on your site so that Google can index that information and understand what it is that you offer. A question we get a lot is about how to treat out-of-stock products. There's different schools of thought, but the basic answer to that is if a product is out of stock, just say that on the page, leave the page up, make it as helpful as possible, maybe put related product links on there or some sort of a sign up to get a notification by email when it's back in stock. And if it's a product that you don't sell anymore, you could maybe leave the page up for a couple months, have that messaging on there, but then eventually take it down. It's really just about managing your product inventory. Structured data for product rich results. So a lot of times you'll see products in search results and they'll say, in stock, out of stock. They'll show the price. They might show star reviews. That's all driven by structured data and product structured data. And it's important in the e-commerce space to have this because it's really remaining competitive because most competitors will have this in some form. And it also kind of helps give Google more precise information about your products. And then free product listings. So if you create a product feed and upload it to Google Merchant Center and opt into surfaces across Google, you'll be eligible for free product listings. You might see these. They're little cards that show up in the search results with the product and details. They were released in the US a few months ago, and I think it's global at this point. Another consideration with e-commerce is the competition. So your competition is really who's ranking around you and who you can compete with when ranking for those certain keywords. So it could be big, it could be big e-commerce players like Amazon or Walmart. It could be similar retailers, affiliates, brick and mortar stores. But it's really important to kind of have realistic expectations about, who can I compete with and who can I not compete with, and then adjust accordingly. And then performance tracking. So with marketing and with SEO especially, we like to have data to kind of inform our decisions or at least help inform them. So a great way to do this is use Google Analytics e-commerce tracking. You can get sales data and user behavior data, and you can really use that to sort of feed into your SEO strategy. So now I'm going to talk about how to put together an e-commerce SEO strategy, and I've broken this down into 8 core tactics, which are kind of the basics of SEO. So they're keyword research, site architecture, on-page content, technical and local SEO, content marketing, link building, and then measuring results. So keyword research, we refer to keywords as queries, and they're basically requests for information from the search engine, right? There's a couple of different ways to use keywords. So one of them is to understand your customer's phrasing and terminology. So the way that you might refer to products in your business might not be the dominant way that people actually search for them and look for them. So by using keyword research, we can kind of find these discrepancies and put words on the page that people would expect to find. We can also kind of find natural product categories by looking at how people divide the information, whether they search for, by gender or they look for the color of something or the size. This example on the right is kind of just a random pick I did for a computer backpack. But you can kind of see this evidence in the data. So like the first result is laptop backpack. So that would tell me, okay, that's probably the dominant form of this keyword. Going down a little bit, you can see laptop backpack for women and for men. So that would tell me, okay, people search based on gender. So maybe we have a filter for that, or maybe even separate pages if there's enough search volume. When looking for keywords, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. So relevance is the big one. A lot of times a keyword might sound like it fits what you're looking for, but you never really know until you search it and you see what the kind of the dominant interpretation is. Difficulty. So a lot of keyword research tools have a difficulty score. This is basically how hard is it going to be to actually rank for this keyword. Volume tells you how often it's searched, usually on like a monthly basis. And then intent. So intent tells you what somebody's trying to achieve by searching that keyword. In terms of where to go for keyword research, so there's lots of paid tools out there. Ahrefs, which is what that screenshot's from. SEMrush and Moz are a couple of the big ones. There's free tools. So like Bing Webmaster Tools has a great keyword research tool, Google Keyword Planner, or you can use search suggestions. So the autocomplete in Google or even like on Amazon or Bing those are all real searches that people are doing. So by just typing in the main topic and seeing the other kind of suggestions, that can be a form of keyword research as well. So one kind of difference to keep in mind is brand versus non-brand keywords. So we want to look, are people searching for the brand? Are they searching for specific products? Are they searching for, kind of generic products, specs and things like that? And this will give you an idea of kind of how you should optimize the site. So branded keywords, they tend to be more high quality and convert well because the person already knows what they're searching for. The downside is that if you only optimize for branded, you're going to miss out on kind of growing your audience, and chances are your competitors are going to be picking up those customers. On the flip side, unbranded keywords can expand your audience. They can help build your expertise relative to your competitors, but they do tend to be more upper funnel and they won't necessarily convert directly. So it's all about kind of finding a balance. This site on the right-hand side here, everything blurred out is the name of the business, so branded search. You can see they kind of have a mix of this, so branded search and then ceiling fan parts, completely unbranded. And then you have Gulf Coast fans, which is sort of a product specific search. Search intent is probably the one of the biggest concepts to kind of grasp and pay attention to when doing keyword research. So it's not just enough to have a keyword that's on topic. We need to make sure that what somebody's trying to achieve by searching that, we're helping them fulfill. So in e-commerce especially, like you'll see a lot of question keywords, a lot of people doing product research, this product versus that product, how does this product work, things like that. Navigational searches are like when somebody puts the name of a business in the search engine and just tries to find that website. And transactional is where somebody's searching for that product because they're at the stage where they're ready to buy or at least start checking out different pricing. As a tip, you can use the Chrome Incognito or another private browser. Search for your keyword and just kind of get a sense of the type of results that are coming up. And then based on those results, you can put out the appropriate content to satisfy that. So once we have our sort of keyword research established, the next phase is to take that and then apply that to the site architecture, which basically means kind of figure out what pages do we want on our site and then figure out where they're all going to fit together, how we're going to group them together. So for product and category URLs, we want to usually use main categories, subcategories, and even sub-subcategories. So this site on the right-hand side, they do a pretty good example or a pretty good job of this. So food handler certification would be the kind of the main category. Then they have that broken up by state. So Florida, and then within each state, they have separate products. So just by looking at the URL, you can kind of get a sense of the relationship between the pages. So that's helpful for users. It's also helpful for Google for understanding these pages and how they relate together. Internal linking as well. So if we're going to have pages kind of, in this kind of descending order, we also want to link between them so that the navigation is really simple. And then speed. So speed is always a concern for websites. And when we have our website divided like this into sections, like say we have a slow section and we have a fast section, then Google can more easily understand those and treat those as being different. Whereas if we have all our pages mixed together, it might not necessarily get that granular information and it might kind of just like average everything out. So that's another benefit. SEO friendly URLs. So this is actually a term that I think I first learned about on the nopCommerce site. And I just really like I like the terminology, so I kept using it. SEO friendly URLs are basically human friendly URLs. It's looking at the URL of a page and basically being able to understand what's on that page. So a good example is, Nike and then running shoes. We can tell right away probably what's going to be on that page. The one below it, this was actually taken from a real site. And so just by judging at that URL, you would have no idea what's on that page. When we set up our URLs like this too, it can also look better in the search results. So you can see those arrows there. Those are pointing to breadcrumbs. And so the top one where it says sport and running and then running shoes, that looks more attractive and clear as opposed to the Nike one below it, which is kind of difficult to understand. keywords in URLs is a very small ranking factor, but mainly we do it because it's helpful for users and it looks good in search results. Something important to keep in mind is that when you change the URL of a page, it is going to impact, or it can impact your SEO, and it can be risky, especially if you're doing this like on a scale, like if you're changing all URLs at once. So you really need to have a good reason to do it. You want to consult with your SEO at the time. And you always, or generally want to use 301 redirects to move the old location to the new location. If you don't have the appetite for changing the URLs like that, as an alternative, you can add breadcrumb list structured data. So this basically tells Google what the relationships are between the page, and it can still kind of get you the benefit of looking good in search results without actually having to change the page URLs. So once we have the keyword research and then the site architecture built out, then we start to fill in the pages with content. So for e-commerce sites, it's going to be product and category pages are going to be of the highest importance. And really the content we put on these pages is going to be one of the biggest drivers of their relevance and their quality for ranking. So some best practices for product pages are use unique content for product descriptions. So don't take content from somebody else's website. Don't use like manufacturers' brochures. Try and make it as original and as helpful as possible. You want to avoid being thin or not providing enough information, but also don't want to be wordy. So word count is not a ranking factor. What is the quality of the information you provide. So just make the pages as long as necessary to give the best user experience, basically. It's also good to include specifications, for people searching for brand versus non-brand. So, some people might search Reno contemporary fan, others might search 50-inch indoor white ceiling fan. Hopefully this page would appear for each of those searches. Imagery is also very important because, we're not seeing the product ourselves, so we have to judge by the images. So we want to have high quality images, show the product from multiple angles, and then try and have it on like a muted or a transparent background so you can really see the details of it. And then including purchasing details, so in stock, out of stock, price, shipping, and taxes. And probably the biggest ones is reviews. So the trust that shoppers have in ratings and reviews is only increasing. And so by having those on the page, you allow people to make sort of better and more informed decisions. And so this page on the right here overall does a pretty good job of hitting on all of these. They have the details and the overview. They have a specs tab, reviews tab, and several images. Title tags and meta descriptions are another important piece of content. So these are what make your first impression in the search results for your page. Title tags are the blue text that's linked to. These are really one to catch someone's attention as they're scrolling on the search results page, and two to kind of give them a preview of the topic of the page. Usually they're 50 to 60 characters in length, and they can be a ranking signal putting keywords in there, although it's pretty slight. Meta descriptions are meant to be a little bit longer description of what the actual page content is. They're usually 120 to 160 characters. They're not a ranking signal, and actually they're increasingly being used less in search results. So I think the last study I saw, it said 2/3 of the time Google actually ignores the meta description and uses the text from the page. So some of these examples here, the one at the top is a blog post, and you can see that the date gets pulled in, and because that happens, it shortens the meta description and cuts it off. So generally, we want to front load the important information on the title tags and the descriptions, just to make sure that that information doesn't get cut off. The middle result for Bose, they likely don't have a meta description, and that's why it's probably pulling in like their H1, and you can see the prices in there twice. It's not really a great presentation, but they do have the star ratings and the reviews and the in stock, and so they do have structured data on the page. And then this bottom one to me is almost like a perfect title tag. They fit in pretty much all the information they could. Nothing's getting cut off. I'm pretty sure that's the actual meta description showing up. So that's a really nice example of how to do it. And show, eat, and needs met. So this is a pretty large topic, but I think it's just good to have a familiarity with some of these acronyms. So a lot of shopping sites are kind of considered by Google to be your money, your life, or YMYL. And so a your money, your life site is basically, it's a site that's held to higher standards by Google for accuracy and quality and everything, because the content might influence what a person does with their money, or with their health, or with their happiness. Basically making important decisions, then your content needs to have higher standards. And one of those is EAT, which stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So when it comes to e-commerce sites, a couple of best practices for EAT are, if you make any claims, you want to support them and say where they're coming from. So we'll see a lot of times there'll be kind of like salesy language, like this is the best, right? This is the best whatever. And if you're going to say something like that or make a claim, it should really be explained, why is it the best, right? And if it's truly not the best, then it's not a claim that we should probably be making. Other times I'll see like statistics on sites that'll be 98% effective or something like this, but it doesn't say where that came from, or even if it relates to the product itself. So really being kind of transparent with the claims that we make. Monitoring, so UGC is user generated content or comments. If you allow comments on your page, those can be indexed, show up in search, and they can be considered part of the page as well. So if you have people, doing spammy comments or trying to insert links or just kind of messing around on your pages, that can affect and drag down the overall page quality too. And then showing authorship and trust signals. So let's say you have a blog post that you had somebody write, and that person has strong credentials to write that, then it's a good idea to attribute that blog. Say who wrote the blog, maybe even give that person a bio page, and then just show other signals of trust throughout the site. So if your things are FDA approved, if they're lab tested, if you have a secure checkout, if you have a refund or return policy, it's kind of just about being transparent for users and giving them that information. Having contact information readily available too is also really helpful. So the fourth sort of step is technical SEO, and I put here a short version because technical SEO is really its own sort of section of SEO, and so I don't want to kind of minimize it or make it seem small. But in terms of at its like most basic level, we're talking about making sure that the pages are indexable, so they can be crawled and indexed in appearance search, and then making sure that they load quickly and are user-friendly. So a couple of best practices are check robots.txt and robots meta tags, which is basically a fancy way of saying make sure that your pages aren't blocking Google from crawling them, and you're not preventing them from being indexed if that's your goal. Having an XML sitemap is also recommended. So this would be a list of all the important pages on your site, and then you submit this to Google and allow them to crawl it. If you have a large site and you have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 pages or more, you might do a sitemap index, which is basically a big sitemap with little sitemaps in it. And then you can also use Google Search Console index coverage report, which is on the right-hand side there. This will show you, what pages of yours are indexed by Google, whether they were found in the sitemap or somewhere else. If you have pages that are being excluded from search, or if you have pages with errors, you can also kind of find that information here and start to kind of debug those issues. So mobile friendliness, mobile traffic, I think by most accounts has surpassed desktop traffic. It's about 50%. Google crawls the mobile version of sites and uses those for indexing and ranking. Right now it does that predominantly, but soon it'll be doing that exclusively sometime in 2021. You can use the mobile friendly test tool here to test to make sure that your pages are mobile friendly. And if they have issues, then you can kind of debug those. We're working with a site right now where half of their product pages are getting flagged for mobile friendliness. And we compare the two, and you can barely tell a difference. And so we're trying to figure out what is it that's flagging it or not. So sometimes these issues can be kind of nuanced, and sometimes it can be really obvious, like you have a video on your page that's cut in half or something on mobile. What's nice is the screenshot over there, and then you'll see HTML. You can actually look at the rendered versions of your pages, and this is pretty close to how Google would be seeing your page when they crawl it. So if you check that screenshot and you see that your CSS isn't loading or something, or your page is broken, or you check the HTML and you have some content you loaded with JavaScript or something that's not appearing there, then that's a kind of a red flag to go in and start checking out those issues. So page experience and core web vitals. So this is kind of page speed, but taken on a broader level. So page speed is a lightweight ranking signal. It is a big focus for a lot of sites. I think if we're talking rankings and SEO, probably want to focus on the SEO basics first. Having great content, great site architecture, everything like that. Otherwise, you're gonna just have a fast site that's not providing people with what they want necessarily. Speed is really important though in the e-commerce space for conversions and for bounce rate. Even fractions of a second can make a big impact on those metrics. It can also be a tiebreaker. So if your site is kind of even with another one, but you're loading faster, then you'll probably get the preference in ranking. So something kind of specific within speed are the core web vitals. These have become like a big focus in the last few months, and in May of 2021, they'll be folded into this page experience ranking signal, which you can see there, all the different components of that. So the core web vitals it's related to speed as well as stability and kind of the responsiveness of the site. So if you're going to start working on page speed improvements and things like that, focusing on the core web vitals first would be a good starting place. You can use Google Search Console, or you can use a lot of the other developer tools listed up there on the right-hand side. A couple of things to keep in mind. So there's a difference, between mobile and desktop. So if you had to prioritize one, I would focus on the mobile version. And these tools also pull in lab or field data. So the lab data is simulated and the field data is from real users. So the field data would be the more trusted data. Another ingredient is local SEO. And again, I put short version here because this is its own pretty big field within SEO. But this applies if you have a brick and mortar location as well as an online store. Then you definitely want to make local SEO part of your strategy. By some accounts, 45 or even above 50% of searches have some sort of local intent or seeking local information. There's kind of two big components to a local SEO strategy. So Google My Business is the first place to start. The business name, believe it or not, whether it has keywords in it, is a ranking factor. So you can't, you don't want to change your business name, obviously, but what you'll see are maybe competitors that are spamming this and putting a bunch of keywords in their title. And if you see that, you can report that and get them removed. The business category you select is also really important. The website link, which page you go to. You can direct people to your homepage, or you can experiment with other pages. If you have a page that's going to be a better experience, you can try using that. And then reviews. Reviews directly impact the rankings, the appearance of Google My Business and search results. So you want to try and get quality reviews, and you want to use those as an opportunity to communicate with your customers. So if you get a good review, just say thanks a lot. If you get a bad one, you could try and turn it around. A lot of reviewers actually look at the review as being like a living thing, and they will go back and update it. Other callouts for Google My Business are accurate name, address, and phone number, keeping your hours up to date, especially for holidays or things like that. Having a good business description. Images is probably one of the biggest ones. So if you take images from the inside of your store or of your products and you have those available, and somebody is looking at your photos and they see the product they want to buy in your store, that's a pretty strong incentive for them to then come in and shop with you. Questioning and answer is another one, and then attributes. So this has become bigger during COVID especially, but you can see the examples on the right. They have like in-store shopping, curbside pickup. There's other ones that are like employees wear masks or take temperature checks. a lot of things that kind of put more information about you in the results and can help you stand out for the right reasons. And then you can have localized website content too. So if you have, multiple store locations, you can have a page for each location. You can even just make the content on your site kind of locally focused and make local references. And then you can get backlinks as well as, citations from local businesses or other sites for things in your area. The sixth sort of ingredient to the strategy would be content marketing. This, I would say, is a component of nearly all of the SEO strategies that we put together. So it really revolves around blog posts as well as guides. And the goal is just simply to grow your audience as well as to increase your authority in search results. So typically we'll write about non-brand queries, questions and problems and things that we know our customers care about. And the goal of the content is really to kind of have upper funnel, middle funnel, lower funnel, really walk people through the sales process, answering their questions, giving them the information they want, and then, hey, you just researched this product, now you can come and buy it from us as well. And one of the biggest things I'll recommend is repurposing or just editing your old content. So just do a content review every 6 months or so, or every year. Look at what's performing and what's not. Maybe you can expand pages, rewrite them, merge them together. This one on the right here, it was published in March 6th of 2020. So personal hygiene, so a big topic. COVID came around, but you can see down at the bottom, the page basically had no action whatsoever. It was just kind of sitting out there doing nothing. They rewrote it, they optimized it for SEO, they adjusted, added headings, adding links, adding better information. And then almost immediately the page started taking off. And so you can kind of replicate this across your site, and over time it can make a big impact on your traffic. So in terms of organizing your content, you can use what are called topic clusters. So this is a pillar cluster model, or sometimes called a hub and spoke model, where basically we group content of similar themes together. So there's usually two different components. So there's the pillar, which would be kind of like the core page of that topic. It's usually some sort of guide or a long form piece. So, if we were a shoe store, we might have like a running shoes guide, where we kind of talk about running shoes in general, hit all the high points. And then in addition to that, we'd have clusters or maybe blog posts or other pages that kind of expand on that. So for example, we might have a blog post about running shoes for wet weather. So in the pillar page, maybe we have a sentence that talks about shoes for wet weather, and then we'd link that to the blog post where we expand on that topic. And we do that enough and we kind of cover the full ground. And then pretty soon we have that whole topic kind of covered with our content. And we've not only built up our site's authority for ranking for those terms, but we've also created this kind of nice experience for somebody who's reading information, and they can easily find links to related blog posts and other things all on our site. So content ideation or coming up with topics. A question we hear a lot is, I want to blog, I want to write and add content to my site, but I don't know what to do for topics. So kind of the first general rule is, for content to have SEO value, it really needs to satisfy a user's search intent, which means it needs to be something that people are actively looking to learn about. We can start with keyword research, so we can look for questions or problems that people have. We can also do a content gap analysis, which is basically looking at what our competitors are writing about, what are their top pages ranking for, and are we talking about the same things? And if not, should we be? I can also use audience personas to frame your content in the right kind of context, the language and culture of your audience. So the way I kind of think of it is, keyword research gives us the question to ask, and then the audience persona gives us sort of the voice of the tone of how we should be answering that question. We can also use feedback from buyers or from salespeople. Keyword research tools tend to have a lag of a few months. So it might not have the kind of like new or trending topics. This is something we saw with COVID, where we heard social distancing, things like this, they weren't showing up in keyword research, but in a couple of cases, we made assumptions that people were searching for those, wrote blog posts about it, and that was able to help sustain a couple of websites, especially early on, like keeping their traffic going. So once we write our content, we also want to promote it, share it with the world, but really focused on the target audience. So you can use organic search, get it indexed, get it out there ranking and appearing. You can share it on social media. So that's what we've done with the blog on the right. That's on Instagram. You can use email marketing or even paid ads to promote your content. And there's also Google Discover. So if you use the Google app on Android or iPhone, you'll notice that under the search bar, there's suggested articles for you. These are based on your search history and things like that. Google Discover, and if you can get one of your ads or one of your pages ranking in there, then it's going to show up for a relevant audience. So the seventh step in the process is link building. So what I found is that their SEOs generally either love links or they're not a fan of it. I only one slide on here, so I'm not the hugest fan, but it is important, and it's kind of always been important and will continue to be important. And the reason is that backlinks build page rank. Page rank is a direct ranking signal. But something to keep in mind is that not all backlinks are created equally. For backlinks to have value, I think of it as they should have relevance, realness, and uniqueness. So basically, is this a link that everybody can get? Because if it is, it's probably not going to be that valuable. Is this link relevant, to your site? Is it coming from a relevant site? And also, will it bring referral traffic? So links aren't just there to give page rank. When we think about it, it should actually be sending traffic to the site. And so if that's not likely to happen, then the value of that link probably isn't very high. In terms of how to build links, so you can look for broken links to your site. Let's say you had, backlinks to a page, and then you move that page, but you didn't 301 redirect it. That's pretty easy to take care of. But really, I think the best way is promoting quality content that has some sort of original research in it, original stats, even an interpretation of some other stats. Like if we're putting something out there that's truly unique and truly useful to people, and they can reference it in their own work and things like that, that's a great way to get backlinks. And then PR coverage as well. So links from media sources can be really valuable. So if we're doing some sort of promotion or some sort of event or something like that, and we're getting coverage for that for the store, that can be really helpful as well. A couple of things to be wary of are tool metrics. So there's a lot of tools out there that give data on backlinks. You'll see like domain ranking or domain rating or domain authority or toxicity, like this is a toxic backlink. So these should kind of be taken as like one of like 50 things that you're kind of thinking about when you're looking at links. So you just want to be careful about making decisions just based on these alone. They're really just sort of starting places. The other thing is Google's webmaster guidelines are pretty clear about what they approve of and don't approve of. Things like link schemes, paid links, spammy links, things like this can put you in violation of the webmaster guidelines. So it's important to know what those guidelines are. And if you have someone building links for you, they should just make sure they know what they're doing and they're familiar with all of this. And if they're not, then you should probably put maybe the link building on hold and focus on something else, like blog writing, for example. So the final step in the strategy is measuring the results. So there's always tons and tons of data that we can look at with SEO. The biggest thing is identify what are the goals of the business, and then how can we measure them with certain SEO metrics. So we could look at things like conversions from organic traffic, product page traffic, core keyword rankings. So, it takes time sort of in the beginning to understand what we want to look at and what we want to pay attention to. I'd recommend checking your data sources at least once a month, just to see how you're trending and how things are going. And then record the data changes. So if you're changing a big page on your website, if you're adding new content, taking content away, you're doing some sort of redesign, or maybe there's like a core algorithm update on Google or something, mark the date that happened. You could do it in Google Analytics or something like that. And then you can compare before and after, and you can kind of have an idea of whether what you're doing helped or didn't. And then I like this phrase, soft eyes. This is from The Wire on HBO. So it's important to kind of look at the big trends of your website performance first, understand kind of what's going on at a high level, and then you can start to dig in more granularly. But what you don't want to do is kind of get fixated on, am I ranking for this or that keyword, and kind of lose sight of what the site's doing on the whole. So Google Search Console will kind of be your go-to source for data. It's free to use. You just have to verify your site. This tells you your performance on Google search, so you can look at things like clicks or actual traffic to your site. You can look at the click-through rate, so how often you're getting clicked on versus how often you're showing up in search. You can look at position for rankings. This is most helpful when looking at individual keywords. You can also filter by date, so you can compare, month over month or year over year. You can look at mobile versus desktop, and you can even just look at product results and just see how your product pages are doing themselves. Bing Webmaster Tools has a similar layout and similar data available as well for Bing traffic. Google Analytics is also important. So this is also free to use. You just have to add the code to your site. This will give you an idea of the performance on your website. So in terms of SEO, we can segment by organic visitors. We can look at source medium to look at the different search engines. So in this example of this site I pulled, Google is at like 93%, Bing is at like 3 or 4%. That's the typical breakdown for US traffic on a lot of sites. And having e-commerce tracking set up is really helpful because we can get all sorts of different data. So transactions, product sales, average order value, a lot of good information there. And then behavior flow. So under behavior, there's behavior flow where you can kind of get a sense of how people move throughout your site. And you can see, like, are people dropping off before the checkout for some reason? Are they running into some sort of difficulty? You can look at people landing on a blog. Are they going to related blogs? Are they clicking to products? So you can get a lot of information that way from looking at the behavior flow. And then there's SEO tools available, third-party tools. I put pay to use, but there's a lot of free tools as well. Just have to look out there and see what works for you. There's also different account levels. So depending on how many websites you manage, if it's just one or several, you can buy different packages. This will tell you your performance versus competitors. And it's also, they usually have some audit tools in there as well to kind of simplify the audit process. So keyword tracking is super useful. You can see how your keywords are tracking over time and compare that against your competitors. You can look at visibility, so grouping a lot of keywords together to look at how you're ranking for certain topics overall. And then health scores, so running kind of regular checks on your site. Do you have pages returning a 404, or do you have 301 redirect chains, or do you have other kind of security issues and things going on the site? So it's good to kind of check that on a regular basis, especially if you work on your site a lot and make a lot of changes. So in terms of where to go to get more information, so Google's often criticized for speaking Googleese, which is like they give you a search engine optimization starter guide that's pretty thorough and pretty detailed, and a good place to start. Oz has a lot of good resources for SEO. Search Engine Journal is a good place to go for articles to get kind of more specialized tips. Search Engine Land is good for news. The Ahrefs blog is probably one of my favorites. They have a lot of good actionable articles in there. And then we also have our Bayshore Solutions blog, and then there's also the nopCommerce blog. So that's the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you very much.
That was great, Ethan. I got a lot out of that. That was, really just nice, right to the point on so many different aspects of SEO. And I really appreciated this. I do have a bunch of questions that I kind of came up with. We might see some pop up in the chat here, but I'm gonna go and ask you some of those if that's all right. All right. So when it comes to just like working with nopCommerce from from an SEO perspective, in other words, do you work with quite a few different nopCommerce sites, and from that output of what's out of the box for nopCommerce?
So I have sort of the advantage where we have a team of developers, and they're all, I think most of them are nopCommerce certified. So I have the advantage where if I need something done SEO for nopCommerce, I'll maybe get the documentation from the nopCommerce site, explain what I want, and then kind of give it to them. But I have found that like for them implementing what I want, it's pretty straightforward, and I think they're able to kind of put the pieces together using the documentation on the site as well as what I'm trying to achieve.
Great, because actually that's where I kind of all my questions are around that aspect from, not so much you as a developer implementing the work, but when it comes to, let's say, some of these out-of-the-box features of nopCommerce. Like, for example, you mentioned the mobile friendliness. I know that depends on certain themes that you use, but out of the box when it comes to mobile friendliness, have you found that has been kind of solved out of the box, or there's always a little bit of tweaking going on there on the mobile friendliness side?
Yeah, I mean, it always comes down to what customizations somebody makes. Hopefully they're kind of focusing on mobile first and then developing for desktop. I'd say most of the mobile friendly issues we run into to be on older sites, pre 2018, 2017, and maybe the site was optimized for mobile, but it doesn't necessarily hold up to current standards. So mobile is something that's good to kind of keep track on and constantly try and improve on, I would say. But for newer sites, they're usually set up ready to go for mobile.
So what about like on the results side? In other words, you mentioned kind of when you build up your brand, you build up your authority, and you start getting a better presence on the results page. But do you find that like just if someone sees your site, then the results that you got a decent product breakdown, or do you know that overall breakdown of your site of products and things like that? Or out of the box for nopCommerce, do you find that some of that's taken care of, or do you have to tweak that as well?
Sorry, somebody was calling me, so I didn't hear the last.
Oh, no problem. No, so like let's say someone doesn't do really any customizations on their site. Let's say they work with the base theme of nopCommerce, and their page starts getting, their site starts getting indexed. Will their products and things like that kind of get indexed as well in the way Google would like to see them? And then in the results page, to where if they hit your site, you would see that breakdown that you'd want to see, like maybe products, FAQ, things like that.
Yeah. So the benefit of Google today is that they understand what's the best sort of user experience, and they'll try and create that for you. So even if you have title tags and meta descriptions that aren't really optimized to look good in search results, they might find other content on your page and put it there. So like they do a pretty good job of finding the best elements on the page and presenting them. I would just say that if you want to take it to that next level, and it's all about competitiveness with competitors, that's when you want to start to say, okay, this looks good, but I really want to optimize it to make it look the best. And that's kind of the difference. But in general, if your pages are, if you're not blocking your pages from search and you're putting good content on them, in general, they'll show up, and you should be able to drive pretty good organic traffic from that.
Okay. And one more question that I would definitely want to look at the questions in the chat. So when it comes to, the themes that are probably that are best suited for SEO, have you found that like either there's some out there that you could purchase that work well, that you have to, do some customization in-house or quite a bit of customization to achieve the results you would like to see on SEO? What have you found when it comes to a new client and kind of how you're looking at different themes to get applied?
So I would say out of the box, most of the themes are designed to work pretty well, and there's not a lot that we would need to do. It's when it starts to come to customization and changing things, I would say that's when it becomes more important to work with your SEO to make sure that I'm changing this for design purposes, but how is this going to affect how quickly the page loads or how it responds on mobile or something like that.
Okay.
So usually if you're sticking to the basics, like you'll hit the basics for SEO, and then the more changes you're going to make, the more you want to kind of start to factor in the SEO considerations. Yeah.
Okay, so most likely as a developer, you're probably going to break the SEO that comes out of the box with NOP versus, and as long as you're, you know, it's good to be aware that your changes could easily break something, I guess is what I kind of got from that when it comes to what comes with nopCommerce out of the box on themes.
Yeah, definitely. I think our best experience is when we have literally the content, the SEO, and the developer all kind of in sync and working together, because what one will do will affect the other's work and things like that. So it's really good to, if you can, have that collaboration.
Great. All right, we definitely have a bunch of questions coming in from the chat, so let's take a look at those, and I probably have a few more for you, then we'll wrap it up. Okay. Let's see. Here, Maxim, I have a question. Is it possible to have full links in nopCommerce like site / category and so on? Seems like out of the box it's not possible.
So I don't think I don't think out of the box it is an option, but it is possible to do. And this isn't something I would handle. We work with the developers for this, but we've talked to different developers who have found different solutions for that. And one of our clients actually found a really simplified solution on how to do that. I can't speak to what it was, but they did find a solve for that pretty easily.
Actually, someone just chimed in on that particular question. If you edit your product in nopCommerce, or if you edit the SEO name in the SEO section of the product, you'll get a more search-friendly name. It looks like that would be the way to work around it.
Okay.
Thanks, Tyler. So I like this chat. A lot of people like to answer questions before you even get to them. Here's another one. How do you think? Can you share some of your SEO work for customers and the changes made, plus the improvements achieved?
Sure.
Seems like a pretty broad question, but if you feel free to address that however you like.
Okay, so I think in general, there's kind of a hierarchy of needs when you're approaching SEO. So at the bottom, it's really, let's make sure we have great content and that it's available for Google. So sometimes there'll be cases where a section of a site will be built in some sort of way where it's not allowing Google to have that information, or maybe it's creating like duplicate pages and one of those pages isn't formatted, and that's the version that you're telling Google to rank. So when you find a problem like that and then you can solve it, it can have a pretty big impact. So we had a case like this where a client had all of their blog posts, basically they had a duplicate version, the duplicate version wasn't formatted, and so the blogs weren't performing well. We fixed that, and then all of a sudden all their blog traffic kind of took off as a result of that. We've also given clients like advice. So they have maybe in-house writers who weren't trained in SEO. So we'll give them a guide on these are SEO considerations for your content, for your articles. They'll take that and they'll do the work, and then they'll come up and get great results from that as well. A lot of it too is just giving the tools like the mobile friendly test tool or the page speed insights tool, running the sites through those, looking at the recommendations, and then just kind of implementing those. But I'd say overall, SEO is really about making gradual improvements over time, and then sort of seeing the benefits from those things.
I know.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. I kind of lost my chat here. There was one by Omar. So Omar asked, when it comes to mobile friendly, does that really mean responsive only, or is there other criteria? You might have addressed some of this, but.
Yeah, so there's different versions of mobile friendly. So having a responsive site is probably the best way to do it. Some sites have like a separate mobile and desktop version, but that can be messy. I think a lot of Google representatives talk more about having a responsive site. But even when your site is responsive and it looks good, there's other considerations like how big your buttons are and the spacing around links, font size, whether you have images that are out of the viewport, things like that. So it can get into some nuances. And the mobile friendly test, to be honest, doesn't give you do a really good job of breaking down those issues. but Google Search Console has like a mobile tab that if you have issues, it'll kind of break those down in there, and you can kind of get an idea from that. But a lot of it is design related.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then also to tack onto that, if the desktop version of your site, you want to try and deliver that same content on the mobile version. So like if you're hiding elements, if you're hiding paragraphs of text or something to make your site look better on mobile, then those paragraphs wouldn't necessarily be indexed by Google. So that's another element of mobile friendliness, is having the desktop and the mobile version be as close in terms of content as possible.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Someone asked if you can share your slides somewhere. That's up to you, of course. We'll have the video out there, but if you like to share your slides, I mean, you could do that as well.
Yeah, we can
and you
talk
can provide
offline about the best way to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You can provide me a link later, and I can put it on Meetup. That's probably the best way to do this. And let's see, is there any other questions? This might be kind of a broad question. Does the algorithm change each time? Is there any way that you're able to know the changes of the algorithm of SEO? In other words, what's the best way that how do you keep up with, what Google and a lot of these other search engines deem as good content, bad content, or what used to be great content is no longer frowned upon? How do you keep up with a lot of these changes?
Yeah. So Google makes, like, I think on average like 3,000 algorithm updates a year. Like, wow. They make like eight a day, I think, is the average. And when we have a core update, when everybody freaks out and things change, that's really just a bunch of updates kind of put together that they put out at one time, or it could be something big and substantial. But basically what happens is people track these algorithm updates based on like how the rankings are changing in the search results. So if the rankings are fluctuating a lot, then there'll be chatter, there's an algorithm update happening. And then what happens is everybody looks at their sites before and after, and they look at like keyword rankings, they look at the pages, how they're changing. And then people start writing about this. And then sort of that's it. And then you read those interpretations, you look at what happens to your client sites, you look at keyword rankings, and it's really about piecing it kind of together. But if there's one direction that I would say things are going, it's really, it's kind of quality is being turned up. Relevance is still important, but quality is being turned up. And then also the authority of the site as well, but also the user intent. So Google is getting much better at understanding what you mean when you search for something and what you're trying to achieve. And so what the results you got like a year ago may be completely different than you're getting today, just based on them understanding better the somebody's trying to search for.
Mm-hmm. Is there any resources that come to mind, like podcasts or blogs that you kind of follow to kind of catch some of those surprises, maybe outside of Google themselves, for example?
Yeah, so there's one SEO, her name is Marie Haynes, and she's probably one of the go-to authorities for analyzing rankings changes. Okay. So she has a nice blog, and you just have to Google her name, Marie Haynes, and her site will come up with a lot of great information and kind of analyzing these update changes. I mean, her team really dig in. Like, as soon as there's an update, they dig in, for the next 24 hours and put out a huge overview. So it's pretty helpful.
Cool. No, that's great. That's a great place to start, it sounds like. Let's see. I'm going to go and jump into some of my questions, and if no more show up, then we'll wrap things up. And if I missed anything, let me know. I guess I kind of look at still more, being a nopCommerce developer, how much, is in the box, and, and how much you need to kind of worry about whatnot. So, for example, I don't know how many different organizations uses the blogging feature within nopCommerce. A lot of organizations have their own CMS and things like that outside of Nop. But, if you were going to use the blogging features within nopCommerce, where you're trying to build up a lot of really good content for your site, maybe as a user of it, you may not be so crazy about the editor and how you post the content, but from an SEO perspective and for, the crawler side, would you say, or is there anything about the blogging feature within nopCommerce that something you know, to, I guess, be aware of, or does it work just great when it comes to SEO things? Or, you mentioned some aspects of formatting your blogging, and I guess I'd like to get your take on the internal blogging within nopCommerce if you've had to deal with it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's the interface and that part of it, and how, whether you like to use it and how you publish and things like that. But when we're talking about the content itself, it's really just as good as anything else, because it comes down to the quality of the information you're putting in there, how cleanly you're formatting it. So are you using, headings and then paragraphs, headings and paragraphs? Is your HTML clean, or does it have a bunch of other formatting and stuff in it? Are you linking between pages? Do you have a good title tag and meta description? Is your page easily accessible and linked from otherwhere? So it kind of comes down to the SEO fundamentals. In the nopCommerce blog, so we had that example of rewriting content and getting results from that. That was done in the nopCommerce blog. So that site's been able to have a lot of success with blogging, just using the native features within Nop.
Okay, so it seems like it's pretty suitable, but it still boils down to the content itself within that post that you have to pay attention to. It sounds like.
Yeah, most definitely.
Cool. Let's see, there was another question that just popped up, I think. I have a multiple language site with a lot of products. Do I have to translate the SEO in every language, or can I use just English and have the rest done by Google? I think you kind of mentioned this. You had when it comes to localization. What's your take on that?
So a multiple language site, if you have different versions of the same page in multiple languages, if you have an English page, a Spanish page, a French page, you'd probably want to look into using what's called hreflang. Hreflang is basically like a setting that you put in the code that says this is the English page. There's also a Spanish and a French version. And basically by doing that, that tells Google that you have that available and that they should serve, the Spanish version in Spanish-speaking countries, the English version in English-speaking countries. So that's a setting to look into. Don't have like duplicate pages. Like if your Spanish page is totally different than your English page, then that's probably fine, and you can let those go because they're going to be treated differently. But if you're literally translating your information into different languages, you probably want to look into hreflang. And in terms of the SEO elements, so like the title tag, meta description, the URL, you'd want to do that in the page of whoever's, or in the language of whoever's going to be reading that page. So you would want to update those as well and translate those.
Okay. All right. I just have like a couple more questions, and we could wrap things up unless a few others pop up. So you mentioned Google Analytics and how you should, I guess you say decorate your site in many ways to tie into Google Analytics. And of course, there's a plugin for that nopCommerce has. Are there any other SEO type plugins for nopCommerce that should be considered for your site?
I don't know if I have an answer to that offhand. I would have to take a look. I would say anything that makes it easier for you to present the content on the page, anything that makes it easier and quicker for you to edit, and anything that makes it easier for you to get data on page performance so that you can kind of make adjustments based on that. In terms of specific plugins, though, I'd have to kind of look into that.
Have you worked with, like, let's say the what came with the 4.3 version, the Facebook Pixel plugin for that aspect of, it's not so much SEO, but when it comes to marketing within other platforms?
So I don't work with that directly, but I do believe that we have paid media team members who run like social ads and things like that, and they would use that.
That makes sense. So yeah, my last question, unless another one pops up here, is going to be, so when it comes to, like, nopCommerce releases like a new version every year, And have you kind of noticed over, let's say, the last couple years of nopCommerce or last couple versions of nopCommerce that on the SEO side, has things improved? Has things kind of broke along the way? Has it just been a non-issue on when it comes to the SEO perspective of nopCommerce as versions kind of get put out there?
Yeah, so I don't think it's version specific in my experience. It's more what someone does on the site as it goes through. So like,
Still that theme
how many
itself,
changes are you
yeah.
making to the site, and are you kind of taking into account the SEO considerations as you're doing that? So I don't know if it's the updates so much as the responses to the updates and how those might kind of impact some of the SEO things on the site. I'd say that's actually the biggest, is when you have a site that's constantly being worked on. It's good to keep track of the work that you're doing, just to monitor site performance. And if you change something and something goes, your traffic goes up or down, at least you can kind of tie that back to a change you made and have an idea that way.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. That's all the questions I have. I don't see any other ones out there or any that I missed. Any last words?
No, I just want to say thank you for having me today. It was a lot of fun. I hope that I gave some beneficial information. I think, with everything that was going on with COVID and everything, I think a lot of businesses have really had to rely on online a lot more, e-commerce especially. So advantages you can do for SEO or any sort of marketing, anything like that. Happy to offer help and yeah.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your talk today. It was very informative. And yes, thank you very much. Let me know if you want to speak again. Very much enjoyed it. All right. Well, everyone, this will be out on nopCommerce's YouTube channel, hopefully within the next couple of days. And we'll see you next month. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.